buying into the myth that it is possible to attain immediate life-altering results when your body has been functioning in such a continuously dysfunctional manner for a number of years or even decades. This is such a flawed perspective, which will end up ultimately stalling your recovery progress. Genuinely, one of the biggest reasons why so many people will never achieve the level of health that they're after when it comes to recovery from their chronic condition is because they're not willing to be patient, and instead what they want is instant and unrealistic results. And I totally get it. If somebody's selling you a dream on the title of a video of how you can instantly fix your current symptoms and bring your body back to a state of equilibrium or balance, and it takes absolutely minimal effort on your behalf to execute, then why would you not click on that video and follow that advice? But when you've consumed enough of these type of videos, years have passed and you're no closer to attaining decent levels of health, there has to be a moment where you stop, you reflect, and you start to think to yourself, maybe striving for a 10 out of 10 outcome in the immediate future is just a fantasy outlook that I should strongly consider revising. The big problem is that most people just aren't incentivized at the thought of getting their body to function consistently at a 5 out of 10. Even if their current day-to-day levels of health are down and stuck at a 2 out of 10. And that's a super important realization to have, as the truth is that those who accept nothing less than a full recovery will ultimately end up with no recovery whatsoever. You have to acknowledge the fact that this recovery game takes time and it has a number of layers to it, and the sooner you're able to accept that, the sooner you can actually start to get the ball rolling and start to turn the recovery dial in your favour. The best way to see recovery, in my opinion, is to view it as a marathon and not a sprint. But not only that, it's a marathon without a finish line. It's a little bit like driving a car. If the car is stationary, but you want to be able to drive it at 70 miles an hour down a motorway, you know that the only way that's viably possible is by gradually working your way through the gears. If you were to accelerate the car too quickly, then what would end up happening is the car would just continuously stall and you'd be stuck in the very same position that you started out. Another example of this would be if you wanted to turn up to a gym as a relative novice and bench press 150 kilos. You instinctively know that if you were to attempt that on the first day, then you would end up causing yourself more harm and it would set you back even further than when you started out. What you need to do is to day by day and week by week gradually and incrementally increase the weight you're lifting whilst ensuring you're taking regular breaks in between. But the important thing to note when it comes to these examples, and if we are to relate that to chronic illness recovery, is that in order to achieve the desired results or outcomes that you're after, you need to firstly know where to start, and then you have to refrain from moving too far forwards too quickly with your actions. And I would highly question the transparency of anyone out there who tells you that you can take a severely disabled body and get it to function up to the same standards as other humans out there who have endured no notable traumas throughout their entire lives, especially when they tell you that you can obtain these results overnight. But if you would like a structured and no-nonsense approach of how you can start to build your body into a far stronger and far less symptomatic version of what it currently is, then I highly recommend checking out the Unbeatable Blueprint online course. This is my signature 5-hour video course where I go into extensive detail about the origin of many long-standing chronic conditions, and importantly, steps you can follow to significantly improve the quality of your day-to-day life. When I think about all of those people with a chronic condition, two attributes come to the forefront of my mind above all else. And what they are is that these people tend to be very fragile, and they tend to have an extremely low tolerance to aspects of everyday life. You see, one of the biggest pitfalls of those who are desperately pouring everything in to attempt to recover is that they have no idea of the enormity of list of things that have the capability of stressing out a body that isn't well enough equipped to actually adapt to the world around it. And when I say this, I'm literally talking about changes in body position, gravitational load, visual stimuli, changes to the temperature, auditory volume, or lighting of your surrounding environment. Anything that interferes with your respiration, like talking or expressing emotion. I'm basically talking about everyday ordeals that the vast majority of humans take 100% for granted. Realistically, how can you expect to be able to handle a 9-to-5 job, exercise, hang out with family members or friends, or go on vacations when your body is having such a hard time navigating its surroundings? It's a little bit like if you were to play a video game and the character that you're controlling always has dangerously low levels of health, but you instinctively know that the only way that you can possibly face and overcome the next level on the game is to first restore your character's health back up to within an acceptable level. So what I think is going on with the vast majority of those with a long-standing condition is that they have either suffered some degree of damage or some degree of dysfunction that is existing within their nervous system, and in particular in certain receptors called mechanoreceptors, which are certain types of receptors that help us to unconsciously detect certain sensory information regarding our surrounding environment. I believe that many people are taking on board consistently inaccurate sensory information at an unconscious level, which is ultimately stressing the brain out, and in turn it's interfering with all of the autonomic activity throughout the body that the brain is continuously mediating. Which is why, in my opinion, the first step to achieving a successful recovery has to be this idea of stabilizing the body. And what that basically means is aligning the sensory division of our peripheral nervous system with reality so that it successfully adapts and responds to any changes that happen within our external environment. Because once your body's able to effectively recognize and then respond to very simple aspects of daily life, then you can gradually train it up to be able to handle much more complex activities without bringing it to the point of total exhaustion and overwhelm. So the first goal that you want to achieve is that you want to stabilize your body, and then once this is achieved, the goal then transitions into gradually building capacity so that as the weeks and months go by, your body is able to handle a much higher load without crashing and becoming heavily symptomatic. And I've spoken about this on plenty of videos before, but the practitioner who was able to help me to achieve this in my own situation, where I was dealing with a horrible case of POTS and dysautonomia, was a board-certified chiropractic neurologist. He ended up running a thorough physical and neurological examination to identify any abnormal outputs that my brain and nervous system were producing in response to relatively novel daily stimuli. And having gathered all of this information, he was then able to follow the corresponding neuronal pathway further upstream to provide me with very targeted neurological exercises that I had to perform on a consistent basis in order to gradually stabilize and correct the dysfunction. Once I had established the groundworks, that was then when my body offered me much more leeway to be able to engage in far more complex human activities. And that was the first time in almost a decade that I had made considerable long-term progress with my all-round quality of life. So hopefully you can take some inspiration from this video and implement similar changes into your own life.